How's it going, people? Hope you're all doing well and having a good day. Last week, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth finally came out on PC, console, and all that, and I went at it like 12-hour streams for like a week, feeding off of pure hype, and I finally managed to finish the story. So today we're going to be talking about my overall thoughts of the game, the story, the gameplay, and anything in between. Now, of course, as the title says, this is going to be without any spoilers, so you don't have to worry about that. You can just put this in the background and listen to what I have to say about the game. Before we start though, I'd like to take a very brief chance to thank Hello Guillotine and also a lot of wonderful people from RGG Studio for providing me with a copy of the game. I had a blast with this game through and through. This game is gigantic and I don't know if I will be able to cover everything there is to cover, but I'll try my best regardless. Now, I played this game on PC, and I'm happy to say that it's a very well-optimized game, so even if you have like a PC that's years old at this point, it probably will be able to run the game just fine. So let's talk briefly about the story and what to expect out of that. So as most of you probably know, this is a dual protag game. You play as Ichiban Kasuga from time to time, and then you also play as Kiryu from time to time, with more focus being on Ichiban as he has more chapters where you play as him. I would say the story overall is pretty good and it has a lot of highlights, but at the same time I can see why anyone would think this is not something that's extraordinary, like S-tier story. Think of it this way, or at least I thought of it this way during my streams. This game is what Lost Judgment was to Judgment, as in the story might not feel super personal, at least not with Ichiban. I actually kind of thought it felt way more of a Kiryu game, which is funny because, again, Ichiban has more chapters in this game, but that's probably just the effect of the bucket list and how that's a very personal part of Kiryu's character. There's a couple of new party members, those being Chitose and Tomizawa, and honestly, I think I really like them, especially Tomizawa. I don't want to really go too much into it because I want you to experience the game for yourself, but Tomizawa is just that lovable idiot. A lovable idiot that keeps on questioning all of the absurd dilemmas the party falls into, which honestly is pretty reasonable because, I mean, we've all seen what kinds of things the Yakuza protagonists go through. And, of course, as you would have in a Yakuza game, there's a couple of moments which kind of made me raise my eyebrow, but it wouldn't be a Yakuza game if that wasn't a thing. I think overall the story's pretty solid. There's a lot of great moments, and even if there were like a couple of moments that I felt unsure about, the overall story I think is pretty cool. And if you're a longtime fan of the franchise, boy, do they have something for you. And I also want to take the chance to comment on how much I love the fact that they actually went ahead and got someone like Danny Trejo for the story. I probably said this like a million times already, but it doesn't stop feeling uncanny to me in the best way possible. I love it. I love that we got there with Yakuza as a franchise. Give me John Cena, Terry Crews, The Rock with the next game, I'll take it. Anyway, I can't really say much about the story because that's like the bulk of the things you want to experience for yourself, so let's just move on to the gameplay, and there's a lot to talk about with the gameplay, trust me. So I'm probably going to start off with the combat because the combat is the highlight for me in like all of the games. As most of you know, there's been so many quality of life additions that just make the turn-based combat feel way, way, way better than it used to in 7. Which honestly, just the thought of that makes me kind of afraid to go back and replay 7 at this point because Infinite Wealth really spoiled me. So some changes you might already know: being able to move around in combat, position yourself better for the abilities. Beautiful. Beautiful. And add to that the fact that you can actually now pick up weapons as anyone, not just Ichiban. That makes this feature all the better. Another one of my favorite things is that you can see the radius of your attacks. So you can see like if it's an AoE attack or like a line attack, which only entices you to make use of the moving around feature so you get the most out of your attacks. And of course, there's combo attacks, proximity attacks, back attacks, knocking enemies onto walls or objects. There's just so much about the combat in this game that is night and day between this game and 7. And of course, given everything that I just mentioned, this means you can chain your attacks in insanely satisfying ways. So for example, you could attack an enemy that will go flying at an ally, and then that ally will attack them, and then they will fall down, and then a second ally will go and follow that up with a ground attack, provided that you've leveled up your bonds enough for all of them to do that. So that makes me go to the next point about bonds. Bonds are way more important in this game than they used to be in 7. That's how you'll unlock combo attacks with your allies to begin with. You don't have that by default at the start. And that's what also will make them chain attacks more often. And in addition to that, it will also give you a tag attack between that party member and the party leader, so either Kiryu or Ichiban. Also, real quick before we move on to the next point, quick-time events, the way we know them in previous Yakuza games, are in this game, and they are so cool. They look amazing. I love them. I love that they brought those back. Huge points for me. With Infinite Wealth, there's plenty of new jobs for both male and female characters, and there's also this new skill inheritance system, which I love. I absolutely love that. That means you can just take any skill from any job and put it onto any job that you want. So you can literally just create your dream class that way. Previously in 7, the way you would inherit moves was a very limited and specific thing. Every single job had 2 moves that would carry over onto whatever job you will choose next. You don't get to choose what those 2 skills are. They're fixed for every single job. So allowing you to pick up to like, what, 6 skills from any job you want is pretty huge. Not only that, but you can also unlock a slot to pick a Kiwami move from any other job. And of course, you can still unlock permanent stat buffs by leveling up those jobs beyond level 30. The personality system will increase your resistance to status ailments as well as improve your support abilities, and it will also allow you to unlock certain areas or talk to certain people. So there's reason to improve your traits. Kiryu has a similar thing in the form of improving his body, soul, and tech. The higher the levels of those, the better and stronger his base job becomes. The hype meter is a new addition that basically allows you to build up a tag move between party members and one of the 2 leaders. Ichiban has no hype meter, but he is the only party member that can launch an all-out attack, similar to the one we had in 7. But because you have to work for it in this game, by that I mean you have to build the meter by just doing anything in your turn, it's much more powerful than it used to be in 7, where you could just use it at a cost of MP. It's more powerful if you get all of the active party members to participate. Not only that, but whereas the ultimate attack in 7 was on one target, this time it's map-wide. So no matter where the opponents are and no matter how many of them there are, they will all get hit. And you also all get a small buff out of it. Unlike Ichiban, Kiryu has a hype meter, but it serves a very specific purpose that you unlock later in the game. That being the Dragon's Resurgence feature we saw in the demo, that allows Kiryu to temporarily break out of the turn-based shackles. I don't think I need to say how incredibly fun this feature is. It turns the game into a hybrid of turn-based and action, provided he's in the party. You can extend its length by leveling up the bonds with your team members, if I remember right. Kiryu does also have a normal tag attack with Ichiban if you want to do that instead. With how Infinite Wealth's story is, it makes full sense why Kiryu is the only one to get an ability like this, but going forward, I do sincerely hope it extends to at least Ichiban or really any of the party members. Maybe we could get a new party member who, for one reason or another, has this ability too. As I've mentioned earlier, there is plenty of quality of life changes or additions that make your life easier with the game. Something like hovering over a taxi on the map and just selecting that taxi and going there is amazing. In 7, if you wanted to check out the spot you wanted to go to on the map, you would have to go back, pull up your phone, go to the taxi icon, and then find exactly where you want to go, and then you go there. Not with 8 though. You just open the map, find the taxi spot you want to go to, and boom, select it, and that's it. You can also hover over shops to see what they have to sell, which is incredibly helpful. Imagine all the time you would have to spend to manually check each and every single shop for the item you possibly need. Now granted, this is not perfect because while you do get an idea and a description of what's in the shop, they show you like 3 products that the shop has. So you don't get to see everything, but it's still very nice, and at the very least you get an idea of what that shop is about. It's also pretty handy because if you're looking for a specific job's weapon, you can just open the shop menu and go through each weapon shop to see if they sell a weapon for that specific job. In Yakuza 7, you could use the jukebox at the hideout to play music, and now you can do that while roaming. There's also the street surfer that helps you traverse the city faster, although you do need to recharge it every now and then, and that's not super convenient at the early game, but you're gonna get to a point where the amount you need to recharge that thing is like pocket change. Honestly, I find myself using the map taxi shortcut way more than the street surfer. Also, are you perhaps grinding to level up the characters or one of the many jobs? Well, there's a thing for that. You have job changing stations right next to the dungeons. And speaking of the dungeons, let's speak about those as well. The Labyrinth is a place where you can grind levels, materials, and also money in this game. You unlock it around chapter 6 for Ichiban, And there is a first clear reward for each stage, and also just a general clear reward. One thing I adore about the dungeons in this game is how varied the rooms actually look. It's not all just the same kind of monotone area. You'll come across weird rooms with decorations, you'll come across treasure rooms, you'll come across rooms that don't really have anything. You'll come across rooms with enemies, you'll come across rooms with a metal slime, or those pesky vagabonds from Yakuza 7. You also have rooms that have chests in them, and there can be either something in that chest or a mimic, basically. And going through these dungeons, you save missing persons, and those particular fights are a bit more difficult than the normal ones, but I think they also give you more money and more XP. And also going through the dungeons, you will earn this currency that you can exchange for items and also materials. One thing to note as well, remember how I said you have basically like this MP3 player, a Walkman that you can play songs with? You can use that in the dungeon, so if you ever get sick of the dungeon theme, you can just pop up that bad boy. Or you can just open YouTube, the choice is up to you. There is a nice little mechanic called Smackdown, where if you get into an encounter with enemies of much lower level than you are, you can eliminate them with one button press, saving you some time. If you're a fan of the party conversations in Yakuza 7, then I'm pleased to tell you that this game takes it to the next level. With Infinite Wealth, not only do you have those, but you have 20 personalized conversations with each and every party member that are laid out in the menu in the form of a bond bingo, and completing all of them will unlock a special scene where you and the party member will hang out at a spot, chat, and then take a selfie to attach that to the bingo page. And of course, you also have drink links like 7 did, which is a mini storyline with each party member. Drink links is what will give you the tag move with that party member, and also it will give you a weapon that can be converted or upgraded into the ultimate weapon for each party member's default job. But wait, there's more! There's party conversations in restaurants, much like how 7 also had those, but this time around they're actually shot in a way where it shows the characters kind of sitting around the table, and I love that. That's really adorable. I love it. It's adorable, it's engaging, it's an upgrade. Combat summons are also back in this game, and there's a new kind of summons actually, where you summon a pound mate that will stay in the fight as a pseudo party member, but you don't get to control them. So every now and then they will control themselves and they will do an attack or two. Then after like 3 turns, they just go away. But you still have the same typical summon where, you know, you see the cool scene, and then after the cool scene is over, the enemies either take damage or they're afflicted with status ailments, or, you know, the party's healed, and, you know, so on and so forth. I'm not really gonna say much about what summons to expect, because I do think that's something you should find out for yourself. There's a lot of really cool summons, but I will just say, do the sub-stories, and do the bucket list as well. One of my favorite things about the game is just how heavily the game rewards you for just walking around town, exploring all the little corners, you know, every nook and cranny. You will actually get really cool items like stat boosters, good weapons, good accessories, armor, materials, and so on. You'll also come across chests in the most random places in the city, so it might be a good idea to just walk around places. And speaking of chests, one of my favorite things about this game is that for the golden chests, you don't need a special golden key for that anymore. You just have to use 3 keys instead of 1. And I personally do prefer them doing it that way because it's more convenient. The soundtrack, in my opinion, has some of the best tracks introduced to the series so far. But I feel like you can say that about any Yakuza game because that's like the one thing they're always consistent with, for the most part. There's plenty of amazing tracks in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and at some point you will probably come across at least one that you will absolutely adore. Shout out to Barracuda for still being stuck in my head. Love that track. Now, moving on to the side content, there's a lot of content in this game. There's a total of 52 sub-stories in the game, and then there's major side activities like Dondoku Island and the bucket list. The bucket list is basically Kiryu's sub-stories because he doesn't have, you know, sub-stories in the typical fashion. Those are for Ichiban instead. I haven't played much of Dondoku Island, to be honest, but people keep calling that like Animal Crossing but Yakuza, and yeah, if you want a relaxing minigame, you're gonna love that a lot. So yeah, check it out. Within Dondoku Island, you basically gather materials and build the perfect resort, and you can eventually also invite people to stay in your island. You get those people from, you know, the sub-stories and the bucket list, so you might want to do those eventually. There's also Sujimon battles. Think Pokemon, but with Infinite Wealth's enemies. There's a whole gacha system in this minigame, and you can use either tickets or in-game money to try your luck at getting tough Sujimon. Alternatively, you can also actually recruit Sujimon by just going onto street fights, and some fights will leave an enemy exhausted and you can talk to them. You can try to strike a deal with that enemy to join your Sujimon. You present them with a gift and try to basically talk them into it, and that can either succeed or fail. I was honestly expecting for this to be a super complicated minigame that I don't know if I want to get into, but it's not that hard to get into. I actually ended up liking it a lot. There is a storyline to it too, so it's a fairly beefy minigame, but it's not like super beefy in the sense that you have to do like 50 Sujimon battles to like reach the next rank. On the contrary, you have to do like 4 battles tops. Again, really easy to get into, and I think anyone could enjoy this. Then we get into karaoke. Oh boy, this is a big one for me. Karaoke is probably still my top favorite activity in the Yakuza games in general. I'm probably in the minority, but when it comes to minigames, I'm honestly not a huge minigame person. A lot of them just feel the samey and like, you know, I don't want to trigger people in the comments here, so let's just move on. So Karaoke in Infinite Wealth has a total of 20 songs, and they practically extend to more than that because the cheering will actually differ depending on whether you're controlling Ichiban or Kiryu. That to me is absolutely insane because they didn't need to do that, but they did. And to explain why that's crazy, in Kiryu's story, your party is fixed, and in Ichiban's story as well, your party is also fixed. You don't really get to exchange them around, so what that means is, for example, Kiryu will never get to fight alongside Jungi-han until Premium Adventure. So basically, for Premium Adventure, they made it so that, you know, if you're playing as Kiryu and Jungi-han is around, he will do his own version of the song. Because of like this special focus, it's probably my favorite karaoke rendition out of all the games. And I mean, like, there's 20 songs, come on, and they're all amazing. There's also a couple of new additions like Crazy Delivery, where you deliver food to people in the flashiest way possible. There's a nightclub you can visit with your party members to basically just increase your bonds together. And Mismatch, where you have to try to find a date and hope you don't get catfished. A couple of minigames I forgot to mention in the initial recording are the vocational school quizzes making a return, and also a new minigame called Sicko Snap, where you take pictures of guys being weird in public. Classic minigames like the batting center, darts, the gambling stuff are all back in this game. And also the arcades, I almost forgot to talk about that. If you're wondering what games are available, you have Virtua Fighter 3, Sega Bass Fishing, and Spike Out. So overall with the side content, I'm satisfied and more, honestly. Dondoka Island is like a whole game on its own. Sujimon Battles is almost that as well. And again, the karaoke is the best it's ever been in my opinion. A lot of you might be wondering about the DLC dungeon, the Big Swell. So let's talk about that as well. Being frank with you all, I have not finished all of it yet, but I did clear one stage of it, so I have a good idea of what's in here. This is only accessible in Premium Adventure once you beat the game, and it actually starts in a similar fashion to sub-stories, but with the whole party taking part in the dialogue. And that's by far my favorite thing about it so far. The introductory scene to it is voiced, so there's at least some work put into it. After I finished the first stage, I was rewarded by an amazing anecdotal scene involving the whole group being treated by Jungi-han to a steakhouse where he tried to explain the benefits of protein while no one gave him any mind. And then the guys all go out to squat until they get spotted by the security, and they all run away together while the ladies just cringe on the inside at them. RGG Studio, please make more of this stuff for the next game. A bonus dungeon that involves every one of the party members with some slice of life episodes that just makes us adore and appreciate these little interactions they have together. Though, you know, just saying, it would be preferable if it wasn't DLC in the next game. And of course, I gotta mention how the dungeon actually looks different from the ones that are in the game by default. It has this medieval feel to it, and I really appreciate the variety. I haven't gone beyond the first stage of the dungeon, so I'm hoping there's even more stuff like this waiting, because I'm already in love. So, I've said a lot of good things about the game. Now, let's move on to the bad. Number one, I've had minor gripes with a couple of the story plot points, but they weren't like super major. It's mostly like when it comes to maybe like one character's motivation and like the way someone responded to it. So it's not that major. It's like questionable to me, or maybe not even questionable, just like confusing. But in a game where you're gonna spend like 50 hours in the story mode, that's not that big of a deal. Number two, there were some menuing issues that I had with the game, and they became more apparent as I went through the game. Something like converting lesser materials into higher materials is actually kind of tedious, because you can only do that one by one, so you can't like mass convert the lesser materials into like, you know, a specified number that you set of the higher materials. Another issue was actually with probably the most tiny thing possible. I ended up having an issue with the item box, which, being fair to the game, I probably wouldn't have used that if not for the insane amount of DLC booster items. At some point in my playthrough, I wanted to put the DLC items in the box so I don't have to use them, and so I don't have to navigate through like hundreds of items, because I just wanted to use my, you know, normally obtained boosters or materials. And that process was so painfully slow. It looked something like this. I eventually just gave up and decided to take everything back into my inventory and just, you know, put up with how many things there are that I have to go through. And number 3. So before I say this one, I have to stress that the previous ones that I mentioned are minuscule at best compared to this one at least. Because this following point is by far my biggest problem with Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, because it's just an objectively horrible decision. The decision to lock not only New Game Plus, but also difficulties behind DLC. The problem with difficulties with this game is that they're tied to New Game Plus, so they can't just include the difficulties, but lock New Game Plus behind DLC, because then it would be literally impossible. In Yakuza Like a Dragon or Yakuza 7, and also in Infinite Wealth, if you want to start on like Hard or Legend, the game will tell you that you have to be like at a certain level. So what that means is you need a previous playthrough. If you start at level 1, they're gonna one-shot you and you're not gonna deal damage. You guys wouldn't believe the kinds of arguments I've seen that either try to defend this, justify it, or make fun of people who care about New Game Plus and are rightfully upset. Stuff like, oh, who cares about New Game Plus anyway? I do. A lot of other people do. Just because you don't care about a feature doesn't mean that suddenly every other person also doesn't, or shouldn't. Instead of looking at it that way, look at it this way. A feature that was previously consistently included in the base game is now cut and being sold behind a $20 DLC pack. You can't justify that. There's absolutely no excuse for it. Next thing you're gonna tell me is, oh, difficulties are gone? Well, that's fine. I only play on normal anyway. Anyway, I don't want to end this on a negative note, because all things considered, I really do love Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I know there are people out there that value the rating given over everything that is ever said in a review for some reason, so I would honestly give this game a 10 out of 10. If not for the New Game Plus thing. Like, no questions asked. This is a fantastic game. I had a blast with it, and there was a lot about this game that was made with love. I actually had people who get pissy with me because I'm able to enjoy the game despite the New Game Plus issue. And that's funny to me, because imagine consuming a whole product and critiquing that product for everything that there is in it, instead of narrow-mindedly pretending that there's only one aspect to it, right? Even though I just called it out in this video and also made a couple of other videos about it. Anyway, who cares about that, am I right? As things stand with New Game Plus being DLC, unfortunately locked behind a $20 DLC, I'd give this game a 9 out of 10. This game is a fantastic experience and I would recommend it to any fan of the franchise. There's something in it for everybody and you will absolutely get your money's worth with how much there is to do in this game. Also, I'm gonna make a new tier list video soon because 3 games have come out since then. Those being Ishin Kiwami, Like a Dragon Gaiden, and now Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. So look forward to that. With all that being said, thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye now. Before you go, I got one more thing to say, and I know what you're thinking, but Leon, that's the cringe part. I know, but hear me out. Ladies and gents, are you looking for a tasty and healthy alternative to soda with plenty of vitamins and nutrients? Well, look no further. Gamersubs has you covered. Use my link in the description or the code DevilLeon7 to get a discount upon checkout. I think at the moment they have a 22% off discount when you use the creator code, so there hasn't been a better time for this. So get one of those bad boys for one of your gaming sessions, and thank you all once again for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.